Number 10. Serving himself to guests. A man in Japan cooked his own private parts and then served them to guests at a dinner party. In this bizarre case of cannibalism, nobody was innocent. The man, Mao Sugiyama, was just 22 years old when he volunteered to undergo surgery to have his private parts surgically removed. These pieces were then frozen and then sent home with him from the hospital. Once he got home, he organized the most disturbing dinner party that you've ever heard of. 5 paying guests attended, who apparently paid around $200 per person to be served his removed organs. This happened in Tokyo, with his body parts being garnished with mushrooms and parsley. But things were even weirder than that at the dinner party. Before anyone could eat, they had to sit down and listen to a creepy piano recital. They then had to take part in a panel discussion about what they were doing. In fact, Mao had actually planned to eat himself, but had changed his mind at the last minute and decided to serve them up. Mao did the cooking himself at the party. There were about 70 people in attendance, with the rest of the members eating a meal of either beef or crocodile. As if having 5 people eat surgically removed pieces of himself wasn't enough, he had to have 65 witnesses munching on dead crocodiles. One of the diners who had volunteered to eat Mao Sugiyama was quoted as saying, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance." Apparently, this exclusivity made him decide in the spur of the moment to just go ahead and do it. As for the taste, guests said the food was a little rubbery and didn't really taste like much. Number 9. Exploding whipped cream. A popular lifestyle blogger had died after a terrifying whipped cream accident. As hard as it is to believe, this poor woman really died from a simple whipped cream dispenser, which actually exploded and hit her so hard that it killed her. Her name was Rebecca Berger, and she had a huge following on Instagram. The French national blogged about fashion, food, fitness, and all things healthy. After her death, her relatives actually posted a photograph on Instagram of the very whipped cream dispenser that took her life. According to the report in Time magazine, the dispenser had been recalled 4 years prior in early 2013 because there were concerns about its plastic top exploding off. And this is exactly what happened to poor Rebecca. The whipped cream dispenser exploded and hit her in the thorax, causing her to die. Last we heard, prosecutors in France were investigating the incident to determine whether the canister was indeed to blame for the 33-year-old's early death. At the time of her passing, she had 170,000 followers. One of her most recent posts was her expressing how grateful she was for her beautiful life and all her success, and how she was looking forward to the future. Unfortunately for Rebecca, a whipped cream canister stopped that future from ever coming. Number 8. Chef falls in his soup. You may have heard the rumors about a chef who died after falling in his very own vat of chicken soup. Well, the rumors are entirely true. The chef was working for a wedding in Iraq, boiling a giant pot of chicken soup for the guests. The cooking took a horrible turn for the worst after he somehow tripped, fell into the boiling soup, and died from severe burns. This is one of the only recorded cases in history where a chef accidentally cooked himself to death, literally. The dead chef was named Isa Ismail, only 25 years old. He was working at one of the biggest wedding venues anywhere in Iraq, called Hazel Hall. Because the wedding was going to host hundreds of people, he needed to brew up a giant pot of chicken soup. It's not really that uncommon. What was uncommon was when he slipped and fell into it, suffering terrible third-degree burns to 70% of his body. He was quickly dragged out of the boiling soup, but it was already too late. He was sent to the nearest hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries 5 days later. Sadly, Ismail left behind his career, his 2 daughters, and his 6-month-old son. And to make things even more embarrassing for the man, he had been a professional chef for 8 years. According to what a relative told local news, he frequently cooked for wedding parties, funerals, and other various ceremonies. Number 7. Cooking show collapse. A Thai internet celebrity recently dropped dead while live streaming a cooking class. The fans who were watching couldn't believe their eyes. They were positively shocked. The internet celebrity, named Pai Peng, started her stream pretty normally and was cooking up something delicious in the kitchen. But then, with seemingly no warning, her eyes rolled in the back of her head and she collapsed. Fans were screaming. The woman was lying on the floor. It was not a very good cooking show. Peng's husband rushed into the frame just a few seconds later and turned off the live stream. Fans then had to wait a few days until Peng's sister went onto her account and revealed the tragic news that she had died. Apparently, an autopsy done at the hospital showed that she passed from a sudden heart failure. It was strange because she hadn't been diagnosed with any diseases during her lifetime and seemed perfectly healthy. Her heart just suddenly quit in the middle of the cooking show, and that was it. Her life was over. Number 6. Fugu poisoning. A man was left in critical condition in Hong Kong after being poisoned by a pufferfish. But no, he wasn't swimming in the ocean. Instead, he had gone home from a fishing trip and cooked up some fugu for himself, with fugu being the meat from the pufferfish. The 65-year-old man's meal didn't go quite as planned though. He quickly developed facial numbness, extreme weakness. He fell into respiratory failure, and he had to be quickly whisked to the emergency department at the local hospital. Hospital officials were sure he had gotten tetrodotoxin poisoning from the pufferfish. Normally, if a person decides to eat the deadly meat from a pufferfish, they go to a proper restaurant with trained chefs who can prepare it the right way. The guy caught the pufferfish himself and took it home to eat it for lunch. As you probably know already, pufferfish have an extremely deadly tetrodotoxin in their liver, skin, and eggs. To cook this fish without properly removing the organs so that the toxins don't kill you is very difficult, and while the individual managed to survive the poisoning, he was extremely lucky. Most people would have died. Would you ever dare to try fugu? Let us know how brave you are in the comments. And before we keep going, don't forget to subscribe. Number 5. Cooking the wife. A chef killed his wife and then, over the course of 4 days, cooked her. Oh yes, this is one of the most bizarre murder plots that you've probably never heard of. The chef, David Vanes, worked at the Time Contemporary Cafe in Lomita, California. On October 18, 2009, David walked through his front door, got in an argument with his wife, and then he killed her. According to what he told investigators, David was so angry with his wife that he duct taped her mouth shut and then bound her hands and feet so that she couldn't move. That next morning, David found her dead on the ground, and his actions were obviously what killed her. So, what does he do? He puts his wife's body in a 55-gallon drum of boiling water and then cooked her for 4 days. As a chef, this was his go-to method. He slow-cooked his own wife until she was soft and squishy enough that he could mix her in with waste from the restaurant. Then he poured the waste into the grease pit. Whatever remains couldn't go into the grease pit. He put it in the dumpster. This guy was clearly quite sick. Even after all that trouble, he kept his wife's polished skull. Amazingly, David got away with the murder until 2011. That was when the police realized he probably was the one that killed his wife. Knowing that the cops were onto him, David jumped off an 80-foot cliff in Rancho Palos Verdes. But much to his dismay, the fall didn't kill him. Now he's in a wheelchair and guilty of murder. Number 4. Burned by the stove. In Pennsylvania, a woman had died trying to cook herself a meal. It happened in the small city of Easton, with the woman being burned so badly in a cooking fire that her injuries caused her to die. But the way she got the burns in the first place is a little horrific. According to the Lehigh County Coroner's Office, Griselda Torres Soto, 57 years old, suffered third-degree burns when her clothes caught aflame as she was cooking. We don't know exactly what she was cooking or how her clothes caught on fire, as the police haven't released that information, but anyone with an imagination can see how this went down. Her sleeve likely caught on fire, the flames then creeped up her arms, and within just a few seconds, Griselda was a flaming scarecrow, screaming and running in circles around her kitchen. The fire must have spread to her whole body, since her burns were so bad that she died shortly after being admitted to the hospital. If the fire had only spread to her arms, it's unlikely she would have passed away. She must have been a literal human torch before somebody found her and managed to put out the flames. Number 3. Drive-by cooking fatality. In one of the most heartbreaking accidents ever, a woman was killed in a drive-by shooting as she stood in her kitchen and cooked dinner. We've heard a lot today about people accidentally burning themselves, but this takes cooking gone wrong to a whole new level. The poor woman, identified by the police as Sylvia Cordova, 56 years old, hadn't done anything to anyone. She was literally standing in her kitchen and cooking dinner when somebody drove by her house in Hartford and shot bullets through her walls. When the police arrived to the scene just after 5 o'clock in the evening, they discovered extensive gunfire damage to the woman's home. They also found rifle casings in the area and Sylvia lying dead on her kitchen floor. Lieutenant Aaron Boisford called the terrifying crime brazen and upsetting, especially since Sylvia had been home alone at the time of the incident. She was cooking a lonely meal for herself, probably deep in thought, when from out of nowhere, well, a bullet went ripping through the wall and knocked her down. She then had to lay there all alone as she died. Number 2. Leg tacos. When an unidentified man got into a horrible motorcycle accident, doctors were forced to amputate his leg. His foot was shattered, and he would never be able to walk on it again. But when doctors told him what they would have to do, the man simply asked if he could keep his leg after they chopped it off. Naturally, the leg did belong to him, so they let him keep it. What happened next It's gonna make you sick. 3 weeks after the accident, the individual invited 10 of his closest friends to a special brunch. Apple strudel was served, puff pastries, chocolate cake, and even some fruit tarts. The guests drank gin lemonade and mimosas. And for the main course, tacos made out of the guy's amputated leg. Now, you might be wondering how he got away with this. The truth is that the United States does not have a federal law exclusively banning cannibalism. Only in Idaho can you be arrested for eating human flesh. You obviously can't murder people or sell human meat, but there's no law saying you can't eat your own flesh for whatever reason. But now, what about the motive? The guy had actually wanted to freeze-dry his leg and use it as a doorstop. However, his main reason behind eating his leg might not actually sound that crazy. He claimed that the leg belonged to him, it was a part of him, and he wanted it back. And number 1, exploding soup. A waitress in China got a little more than she bargained for when she showed up to work and had soup explode in her face. The waitress was attending a table full of guests when one of the guests passed a lighter to his friend sitting across from him. However, he accidentally dropped it into the hot pot of soup. As the waitress tried to fish the lighter out of the soup using a ladle, it exploded, causing boiling hot liquid to splash into the poor woman's face. But not just her. One of the guests was also impacted by the exploding soup, and while it may sound kind of hilarious, it was horrifying for those involved. Both the customer and the waitress were sent to the hospital with serious burns. Unfortunately for both of them, the burns were all on their faces. Even though they were expected to make a full recovery, neither of them will ever look the same again. The waitress and the guests will now have gruesome burns on their faces, and it was all because of some exploding soup. What's the strangest cooking incident you've ever heard of? Let us know in the comments, and thanks a lot for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back again for another wild video. See you next time.